Fuck. Hey, welcome to Sam and Hip Hop, where I, Sam, talk about the hip hop genre. Mostly albums and songs and whatever else seems to happen. And today in hip hop, Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. Piñata. So this album is weird. So I did not expect this album to happen. Or, I didn't expect it to be good. Madlib is one of the best producers ever. He's put out some of the best albums ever with some of the best production anybody has ever heard in this genre of music. I mean, maybe you've heard of Madvillainy or something. Madvillainy an obvious pick. It's still a fantastic album with insanely good production from Madlib and great rapping from MF Doom. Weird rapping, which is kind of the kind of stuff that Madlib usually seems to have a bit of a ear for. He really likes the weird stuff, from what I've heard. Which is why I was kind of taken off guard by the fact that he was going to make an album with Freddie Gibbs, this rapper who really was kind of mediocre when I kind of discovered him. I wasn't too excited about this album when I heard about it. I looked into Freddie Gibbs' discography and the kind of things that he'd put out, and it just was kind of generic to me, and I didn't really see much happening in this collaboration. Freddie Gibbs usually raps over trap beats, not the kind of weird, really smooth beats that Madlib really likes to make. But then I heard the song Thuggin', and man oh man, was I ready for this album at that point. I got hyped for this shit when Thuggin' dropped. Thuggin' is one of the best songs I've heard in years, and it came out 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still one of the best things I've heard in years from hip-hop. This is one of my favorite hip-hop songs of the last 5 years. I love Thuggin'. Thuggin' is just the way Freddie just flows so cleanly over this super smooth, laid-back beat, which has this really nice, beautiful guitar sample that's being repeated over and over in the background. But the beat never sounds repetitive because Freddie just goes in on this thing. He talks about growing old and still being a gangsta, and it sounds so good. But I still didn't really know what to expect. Was this album gonna deliver the same kind of insanely goodness that was Thuggin'? The answer is yeah. Absolutely, this album is fucking great. Piñata is the pinnacle of everything Freddie Gibbs has done ever. Nothing he has ever made has ever been as focused and just... Freddie pulls this off in this way that I have never heard Freddie pull things off before. He pulls it off cleanly. He doesn't have any bumps in the road. There are no bumps in the road from Freddie's part. And neither on Madlib's part. There are no beats on here that make another beat sound bad. They all sound great. And some sound even better than the great ones. It's Nirvana. It's hip-hop fucking bliss. The intro to this album is basically just this bongo drum loop over these samples that Madlib has put together. And right after that comes the song Scarface, which is... Whew, I knew as soon as Scarface started that this was gonna be a fucking... It's too good. This album outshines everything I've heard from 2014 so far. It's unfair. This album is unfair to other albums that have come out this year. And I may just be way too nice to this album, but honestly, it has outshone every hip-hop album I've heard from this year so far by a long shot, honestly. And I knew this was gonna happen as soon as Scarface started. Just this crazy clusterfuck of sounds that starts the song off, with Freddie Gibbs hyping up the track like you are getting ready to hear something fucking awesome. And then when that fucking, bass thing comes in on that song, oh my god. It sounds like a blaxploitation film. It sounds like a blaxploitation film. It sounds like This whole album sounds like something from the 70s. And it just... a really good movie from the 70s. A really good, shitty action movie from the 70s is what this album is. And it is... oh man, it's great. Some of the highlights on this album, I can't even really call them highlights because they don't really come higher than anything else. They're just just as good as the other tracks, just stand out more, I guess. And those songs are namely High Herald, Shitsville, and Real, because the beats on those songs are a bit more aggressive than a lot of the other songs on this album, and the lyrical standpoint is a lot more different than a lot of the other songs on this album too. Like, Shitsville's got the lyric, "I'll leave your thoughts on my shoestrings." What? Which basically means that he shot you in the head and your brain matter is on his shoes. Your brain matter is on Freddie Gibbs' new pair of shoes. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. But no, in all seriousness, this album is kind of perfect to me. I cannot think of one thing on this album that I didn't like, except for that Mac Miller finished it. But that is not to discredit Mac's verse. His verse is great by every stretch of the word. It's just, I feel like Freddie Gibbs should have closed this off in a more closing-esque manner. I loved the song Piñata. I loved how that it was just this giant song full of verse after verse after verse of great rappers. Michi Darko, for one. Man, does he fucking kill it on this. And I never would have expected Michi Darko on a Madlib beat. One of my favorite parts about this album is just the contrast between what the rappers are actually rapping about and what Madlib is putting on the record, which is these really smooth, laid-back, chill beats that seem like they should be intended for somebody like MF Doom, or somebody like Mos Def, or somebody like Q-Tip, somebody who can really just grind all on these really smooth beats. And they keep it at a laid-back, cool pace, but they still rap about this shit that is so gangster and hard and really dark shit. And just the contrast between this smoothness and this dirty aggressiveness, which is being conveyed by the rappers, I love it. I think it's genius. I think it's one of the best things I've heard all year. It is just track after track of great song. The cohesiveness of this project is just great. The fact that Freddie Gibbs is so focused and so still on what he is rapping about, and he does not stray from what he is rapping about, but he keeps it at this one level, which makes the whole project seem like this one album, and you need to listen to it all the way, every single time, or else it's just gonna sound not as awesome. I give Piñata a high 4.5. A very, very good album. Thank you.
Oh, it's you again. Don't you ever give up?
At one time I thought of giving up, but now I think differently. You can help change them by learning more about your culture and believing in yourself.
Oh yeah? You gotta be joking.